Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Something I've learned in terms of introducing myself that I've learned from Maurizio is that all of us have a professional self and we have our personal self. So I like to introduce myself in both categories, and I know and I'd invite you to do the same if you ever had the invitation to introduce yourself as well. So professionally, I think Daryl has covered it, but I've been a therapist now for nearly 30 years. I work with individuals, couples, and families. My youngest is usually around the 5-year age gap. I don't try and go younger. I have from time to time, but it's only in quite extreme circumstances, and I go right up to the geriatric. So my oldest client to date has been a 97-year-old man, and I like working across the lifespan. I find it very enriching. And yeah, so men, women, couples across the lifespan, and I pretty much now, after 30 years, work with every kind of issue imaginable. What I don't do anymore now that I'm in private practice is drug and alcohol, mainly because of safety. I work in my own private practice and I don't have the safety units here. But some of my clients still do have those issues, but I'm very selective with who I work in that field. But apart from that, I work with all kinds of issues. So relationship issues, grief, loss, self-esteem, anxiety, depression, you name it. So yeah, I'm very, very passionate as a therapist. I've been very fortunate for the last 10 years. I've been training with Maurizio. I've done every single one of his training here in Perth. Has been very intensive, and I've worked with him now on 4 of his books. So that's been another very, very enriching experience. And I've learned a lot from him. And personally, I am 54, going to be 55 in July. And I have a son who is a firefighter. He's in his 30s. I'm a mad cat lady. I've got 3 cats and 2 dogs. I live here in Perth. I love my home. I love gardening and cooking and reading and Zumba. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. So I'll leave it back to you, Daryl, to ask me your first question.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Your son fights fire, and you fight fires for couples, huh? So,
Very cool.
I'm aware that you kind of, among all, you have told me that you really enjoy working with couples. It's a
Yes.
special thing for you. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit on why are the couples such a precious thing to you, as a therapist.
I think I just really enjoy the challenge and the dynamic. I am able to hold both partners, and traditionally, it is a male female, but I've also had gay couples here with me as well. I don't know what that's like in Malaysia, but I am able to hold both parts of the couple, which I really like. And I think for any of you who work in this helping professional field, it's a joy to try and help unhappy people become happy in whatever way that is. And couples, I just find it so interesting what they come in with and where they're stuck with, and if I can help to shift that in any way. With some couples, there are success stories, and they do improve and have happy lives. I can tell you some stories about that. And some couples come because they need help to separate. So that's another tricky part as well. And I never ever make that decision. It's not my decision whether couples stay together or not. I'm there to talk about any red flags that I see, issues that I see, and help to bring in more constructive way of working together. But it's not my job to say I think it's time for you to leave this person. But I can say, look, it is also part of my job, if I see something abusive, to name that abuse as well. So I think it's very challenging, very dynamic, very exciting. And yeah, I don't know, I think it's hard to put your finger why you like something so much, but I think a lot of it as well, I feel totally at ease going with. When you do couple work, you have to be able to go down into the gutter, and you have to, because you're going to the most intimate aspects of a couple's life, including sex. And so if you're not comfortable going into the gutter, if you're not comfortable, like gutter meaning not just sex, gutter meaning that the dirty business, how we fight dirty in life, and all our defense mechanisms. If you're not comfortable talking about sex, then it'll be very difficult to do couple work. because you'll be avoiding those issues. So I suppose, it's like finding a groove that fits you. If it fits you, then you're going to do wonderful work. But if it doesn't fit you, then it's better for you to acknowledge, I don't know whether I can do that, because you won't be helping them or yourself, really. Does that answer your question, Daryl?
Yeah, that's a great answer, and you also offered to kind of share stories, right? So maybe we can go into what is probably one of your most challenging couple cases that became happier, as you said. You like helping people get happier. Would you
Sure.
be able to share something that is that you're proud of,
Yeah,
or work that is great? Yeah.
for sure. I'll share with you some now. Also, guys, I've got my chat thing up. So if you guys have questions while I'm talking, feel free to pop it on chat. And if I can, I'll come to them. So if you have anything that you would like, if something pops into your mind, you'd like to share something, or you agree or disagree, pop it there and we can come to it. All right. So if you feel that way, it can be a bit more interactive rather than me just talking and you just listening. I'd like you to feel that you can just jump in with your comments, and I'll try and address them. So, I mean, like right now, I can tell you, I have very interesting. I had two couples come in. Actually, let me start from the beginning. Can I start from the beginning?
Yeah. Go ahead.
From the beginning, many years ago, when I started working with couples, so progression of me as a therapist, I started as an individual therapist working in crisis centers, and then I progressed to couples and now families. So now I do the whole shebang, right? But I remember starting working with couples, like I was working with couples even in the beginning, but say 15 years ago, really becoming focused in that work. And to begin with, to tell you the truth, I was pretty crap at it. I was too nervous when I had these people in the room with their anger. I didn't know when to step in, when to say no, how to be direct. I was still learning. I call it being a baby therapist. For those of you who are therapists, do you remember when you first started out fresh from university and you hit the work field? I call myself a baby therapist when I'm a novice at something. So I was a baby individual therapist, and I was a baby couple therapist, and then I was a baby family therapist. So and like babies, you have to go from being newborn to being able to go onto your tummy, to being able to crawl, to being able to stand up, to be able to walk, to be able to run, to become an adult. So there's a progression. So be gentle with yourself if you're on this journey. Try and identify which stage of the babyhood you are, toddler stage or advanced or whatever, and be patient while you develop new skills. Give yourself that grace. But for sure, any of the couples that came to see me 15 years ago may say that Narina was crap at it, and I would wear that. Not completely crap, because I'm a good therapist, but still, I feel that as a couple therapist now is a very different story than how I was 15 years ago. Now, I tend to talk too quickly. So if I talk too quickly, can you please let me know and I'll slow down? Yeah. So just let me know if it's too fast for you. So coming back to the present time, about maybe, I don't know, not quite a year ago, maybe 10 months ago, I had two couples come in. So two different sets of couples come in. And they were both at a very similar part of their lives, okay, of their couple relationship, which meant that they were heading towards divorce. Though in both situations, and it can be different in other cases, it was the wives who were fed up of the relationship, were tired of telling the husband that they were not happy, tired of not getting anywhere, and they were prepared to walk away. They were at the door like, I'm leaving now. And that's when the husband seemed to get activated to, okay, they seem to understand their wife's about to leave. So they come in. So these two couples came in around about the same time. I met them within weeks of each other, and they were both at that point. And the phrase that I use for these couples is the Titanic is about to hit the iceberg. So let's not make any mistake there. And before I go there as well, I do certain things, like when a couple comes in. A couple can come in many different ways. Either one person will come in for, the wife or the husband may come in, and then we can invite the other person in, or some couples will present together from the very start, right? And even sometimes, something starts off as individual therapy and eventually becomes either couple therapy and or family therapy as well, because now I offer all those things. There are a lot of therapists in Australia, and I don't know what it's like in Malaysia, that if they've been working with an individual for a while, they will not see the the couple. They'll refer them to another therapist. I don't do that. I feel that I can bring a new person in and deal with it, like I do with family therapy anyway. But I know I'm in a minority there, and I'm not going to try and I'm not going to say that's how I feel comfortable doing it. I have a lot of success with that. So I don't feel like I have a bias with one partner when the other partner walks in. In fact, it enlarges the picture for me. Suddenly I'm seeing things that one person hasn't told me, so I'm seeing the bigger picture, which is also very, very helpful. So these two came in together. These two couples came in together. And told me their stories. Now, one of the props, I don't know whether you guys have props in your room. One of my first things I do, my first session, I have a snake. I'll get it for you. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
So it's basically something that you put as a doorstop to prevent the wind from coming. Australia could get cold, but basically I have this snake, and he's a buddy of mine in this room. And I will get each of the couple, after this is near the end of the session. Okay, so they've told me their whole sad, sorry story. We've come to nearly the end. And I said, look, here's a snake. Can each of you grab an end of the snake, right? And so they do. And then I say, now, if you pull it tight, that's the yummiest relationship you can imagine happening. You are so happy in this relationship. You drop the snake on the ground, that relationship is over for you. You are about to walk out. Okay, so if you drop your end of the snake, it's over, right? I said, but you may not be ready to drop the snake, but you're not very happy. So the snake is getting closer to the ground. Can you see that? So I said, with each of you holding the end of the snake, can you adjust the snake for me to show me how low to the ground you are? Okay, and let me know when it feels right for you. So sometimes they'll say it's here, it's here. One person saying it's here, one person saying no, it's up here. You understand? Like they will tell me what they think. And then, and I've had also some couples, I've had situations where one person, I said, now tell me, if it's over for you, drop your end. And I have had some people do that. All right. So which means they've come to say goodbye. But anyway, more or less people don't drop the snake. They'll adjust the snake, but it's usually low to the ground. And I'll say, now, if it was humanly possible, if it was possible, your fantasy wish, how would you like it to be? Show me with the snake, right? Pull the snake to show me where, and you'll see them, most of them will do that, right? But it's not just automatic, because some people, you'll see one person pulling and one person not pulling. That tells me who's more motivated to work in this relationship, right? Or it's like that's what I should be doing. Or it's a so just by this non-verbal with the snake, I find out a lot about a couple. Yeah. So is that helpful for you so far? Yeah. So I like the snake. So anyway, so these two couples came in as a case example, and they both had the snake low to the ground. No one had let go of the snake. So we start to do our work. Now, in the work that I do couple work, but I also do individuals. So sometimes I will pull them, like I will have individual and couples going simultaneously with me. Now, again, this is a big dialogue with therapists. Sometimes people, what they do is the husband sees his therapist, the wife sees her therapist, and then they see a couple therapist. There's 3 therapists involved in the couple, right? Which to me is a big soup's nest. So for me, I prefer to see wife separately, husband separately, and then the couple, so I can bring them together rather than this therapist having this information, this therapist having this information, and you're working in the dark over here. But anyway, to each his own. And in working with these couples, I also do psychoeducation work as well. So apart from therapy itself, I also do things like what I say is that if you come to me individually, when you come to me, you can say all the nasty things you have to say about your partner, and it's completely confidential. My individual sessions are confidential, but they can drop all their anger there. It's a safe place for them to drop their anger, whatever's happened. And then I try and leave the couple work to be a bit more constructive. And so I do a bit of psychoeducation. So I will go through communication, not he said, she said, communication in terms of power, which is, I wouldn't be able to go through that with you today, it's too long. I also do love languages. Have any of you heard of love languages? It's, it's different ways that people experience love. If you want a great resource, The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It's a fantastic resource that you should all be reading and passing on to your couples. I do anger. I do something else called the parent-adult-child model, which is also very interesting. A lot of couples, and when you first meet, am I talking too quickly, or is this all quite interesting? Are you following me so far? Okay, good. When we meet, right, we meet adult to adult. When you first meet someone, think back to when you first had your relationship, you meet, which means all of us have strengths and weaknesses, but we plug into each other's strengths. But in a couple's life, after some time, the dynamics will start to shift, bit like the earth, the ground can shift, and one person can become more the parent and one person can become more the child, right? And that causes and sometimes that couple can swing. Maybe we can talk more about that later. Sometimes they can really make a couple shift, in terms of swinging. Are you guys aware of the parent adult child model? Some of you are, some of you may not be, but anyway, when that happens, if one person's more in the parent mode, it means they're the ones that are they're very powerful in the relationship, and they set all the rules, and they tend to scold the other partner. You don't do a good enough job here. You need to do this, you should do this, don't do that, do this. And then the other person in child mode may start to walk on eggshells. Either they'll try and keep mommy or daddy happy, meaning the other person, the other partner, or they'll become rebellious and say, don't tell me what to do. This is my life, but in a rebellious child way, right? And some couples can swing, meaning that one person can be more the parent in some areas of their life. Like in one example, many years ago, I had a couple where the husband was in parent mode when it came to finances. And he would scold his wife, for spending too much money. He would check the credit card reports, like he would constantly be yelling at her, and her love language was gifts. So she would buy a lot of presents for people all the time to show her love. And in the meantime, she would then be scared of him, yelling at her. So she would hide things into the house, pretend she's always had it, or it was free, or it was a gift, or he'd forgotten about it. So she was in child mode. But that same couple would swap when it came to parenting or housework. Suddenly, she would be yelling at him that he didn't do the dishwasher properly, he doesn't sweep the floors properly, he doesn't, brush the kids properly. And he would be like a child, at first trying to make her happy, but then getting angry and saying, if I don't do a good enough job, screw you, you take over everything, all right? Other couples can be quite fixed. For example, I had another couple many years ago. The wife was a very big businesswoman here. She owned a few businesses. She dealt in millions, and this was a second-term relationship for both of these. They'd both been married for 20 odd years before and divorced, and so they'd met each other later in life. And he had just sold his business, and he'd left the marital, his old marital home. So he didn't have he was just staying somewhere. So she said, well, you can move in with me. Because she had a house, but her adult kids still lived with her. So he moved in with her. And then she said, because he had sold his business, she goes, well, actually, I need help in some of my businesses. Why don't you come and work with me? Help me out. So he went to work with her. So could you see that she became the boss at home and at work as well? And he also had a very childlike, playful personality, would tell inappropriate jokes, tends to drink too much, things like that. So that couple was fixed. Now, when you have a parent-child dynamic, usually sex goes out the window, all right? People with this entrenched kind of conflict don't have a lot of intimacy in their relationships. But anyway, so I'll do all this psychoeducational kind of work and others as well that I may not have mentioned so far. And we're going back to these two couples. So they came in, the Titanic, the Rock. We did some of this work. In one case, in one couple, it's been a huge success. This couple really, did it. They understood who was in parent, who was in child. They worked really hard to address that, because both of them had to come to an adult to adult way of meeting. They had to look at the ways that they were talking to each other. And this is really interesting question. We'll come back to communication. Often we give the best of ourselves to our work or to strangers, but we're quite nasty to our spouses. We're not very friendly, right? So a question that Maurizio has says often: are you a better wife or a better mother? Are you a better husband or a better father? Because sometimes we're great at one role, but we let the other role slide. I've got another couple that have just come in right now. The wife doesn't work. They're very wealthy. He's a doctor and she's at home. But he just came in last week for the first time, and he said to me, he said, at work everyone loves me, but I come home and my wife hates me. So I said, are you a better doctor than you are a husband? And she said, oh, and these two both had been married before, and they both had kids from a previous marriage, and then they've got together 17 years ago and had another child. This is another couple. And she says, all her attention goes to the children, none for me. So you're telling me your wife is a better mother than she is a wife. So these things are very interesting to sort of ask people where they're at, and how they're treating their spouses at home. But coming back to this one, the same two couples I was talking about earlier, one couple have really worked hard and addressed all the issues. And as though they're now only coming monthly because they're feeling fine, and they're so freshly in love. It is so wonderful to see. They were here a couple of weeks ago. They were coming fortnightly for the last month or so, last couple of months. And the wife said, for the first time, I feel I can have it all. They've been together for about 20 years. They have two adolescent children. They're both teachers. And she was going to divorce him 10 months ago. And she's saying now that he's so kinder, more attentive. They've just bought a holiday home down south. And they weren't having intimacy for a couple of years, and they're now back to having intimacy again. So very successful. And when she said, I think I could have it all, he reached over to their separate chairs. He reached over and he just looked at her with so much love and adoration. And it was so beautiful, the moment to be there with them. So they came in again just on Wednesday, and they're thriving. They're fine. So now I'm going to see them in a month's time. But I think, they're up and running now. I look at some of my work, when you buy a dilapidated property and the garden is all, it's all really bad. And sometimes you've got to bring the bobcats in, and you've got to take away the dead trees, the dead plants, you've got to take away the dead grass. And it looks like a bomb has hit the property. It doesn't look good at all. But then you plant the grass you want, you plant the trees you want, and the garden starts to look great. But you still have to do maintenance. You still have to do pruning and fertilizing and weeding to keep that garden looking thriving. So I use that analogy with my clients a lot, and so that couple, the thriving couple, they've just planted a beautiful garden. It's looking great, but we still have to do weeding. Okay, we still have to do maintenance. The second couple are going in the opposite direction at the moment. The husband has had a lot of anger issues in his life. He's not violent at all, and he's not dangerous to his wife or kids, but when he gets angry, the wife can't handle it. And this has been happening for a long, long time, and it's still happening. Even though he's now aware of it, he's still struggling to get that under control. So they haven't separated, but they are still very much in trouble, and it's still a work in progress. But the husband now really has started to trust me in a big way. So now I'm working with him on his anger in a very intensive way. And so we'll see what will happen there. And at the moment, they had this couple, a second couple, have the luxury of, they actually have two buildings on their property. So the husband's moved into one building and the wife's in another building. So they're living still within the same compound. But I've said to him, I said, for now, if you can just offer your wife friendship is your best bet. Because if she can see that you've started to, that you're her friend, that you're being loving and kind and supportive, and you're not angry with her, and you're giving her space, and that you are still her friend and you're working on your issues, who knows what can happen? So we don't know yet. I said, but if you push her at this point, she's gonna leave. She's gonna go. So, but I also feel that he's got a lot of trust with me. So with that, I would say it's still a work in progress. I still don't know. The wife has lost a feeling for this man. They haven't had sex for many years. At this point in time, she still feels complete repulsion at the thought of having sex with him. So we're far away. And whether the best I can do for these people is that they just become good friends so that they can still parent their children. They've got two children. One's a teenager, one's about 10 years old. Or whether or not they can make it which I think is a possibility. I still have a space of hope. And or whether they divorce. So we'll see. Now, any before I talk anymore, any feedback from anyone? You can put on your mics, people, and just talk to me if you like. Just call out, just talk to me.
Yeah, so much has been said, so maybe we just talk a little bit before we go back to Narina. So would anyone have any comments or thoughts or questions? Yeah, go ahead, Carol. You have
Yeah,
to unmute first. Yeah.
yeah, unmute.
Okay, we can hear you. Go on.
Okay, hi, Narina. My name's Carol. Lovely to hear you. You're so animated. Lots of stories. I love this way of presentation. I've been a counselor therapist for close to 30 years. Don't do a lot of couples because it just gets too messy.
Yeah.
Somebody I'm seeing now, there's a lot of there's a lack of trust because the spouse, not the spouse, sorry, they haven't got married. The wedding was actually put off because she discovered that he had an affair.
Right.
Now there's no trust left, and she's calmed down. She's not as angry anymore. They're thinking of getting married again, of marrying each other again. But there's very, very little trust already. How would you go about dealing with something like that?
Yeah, well, the thing with affairs, and I don't know how much work has been done with the affair, but the interesting thing is that the person, like they're not. Oh yeah, I'm just writing things down. They're not facing in the same direction at the moment. Often the person who's had the affair wants to be future focused. Like, please forgive me. It's in the past. I don't want this person. I want you. Let's just forget about it. Mea culpa. Let's just get married. Let's just go and have this happy, great life. And the person who's been betrayed is going in the opposite direction. What was it like? How long? How often? How did you meet? Are they, and in their minds, did they have better sex than me? Like, what did you like more than them? Why did you do it? If you love me, da da da. So they are in different directions. So we have to go backwards before we can go forwards. Okay. So I don't know how much time you spent with the affair. I can give you a story. Shall I give you a story about this kind of thing? I love this story. A couple came to me. This is many years ago, maybe about 10 years ago now, and they're old. They were older than me, so they were in their 50s, maybe late 50s, early 60s, and the husband was ex army, SAS, and wife was a housewife. He was ex-army. He was, so even though he was 60 years old, he was very fit, very physically tall, fit guy. She was your typical, I shouldn't say typical, but like more your housewifey kind of woman, like bit portly. She'd had 2 kids, blah blah blah. Anyway, they had 2 kids in their 30s, and the kids had moved out of home, and the husband was into sexting. All right. So his love language, for anyone who's done love languages, what's his love language? If he's into sexting, what's his love language? Does anyone know?
Words of affirmation.
Very well done. Who said that?
Me.
Carol, you're on fire, my friend. You're on fire. Okay. So his love language is words of affirmation. So if you like words, you want to hear it in all forms, even the dirty ones, So he wanted to sex, and he wanted to sex his wife, who was fairly horrified by this. So she refused, and but also made him feel like a dirty, like a dirty dog. Like basically was a critical parent to him. Told him off. This is disgusting. How dare you? Blah blah blah. So he did, and of course went onto the internet, didn't he? Now he didn't have an affair, but he was sexting women on the internet. She found out, and my God, the shit hit the fan. So they came to see me. We did our work, blah blah blah, and they turned the boat around. So the Titanic did not hit the iceberg. They were very successful. This is one of my success stories. And when they had, they were really doing well. She came in on her own one day. She wanted to see me on her own, and she came in and she said, "Narina, I've got something to share with you." And she was in a very somber, very serious face on her. I said, "Yes, what was it?" And she pulled out of a handbag. And like my grandmother, I forgot to introduce myself personally. My Indian grandmother, used to put her money in a handkerchief and tie and put it in her bra. Did you all have grandmas like this? Anyway, this woman had scarves, and shawls, and she unwrapped. There must have been about 8 10s of these, and she had tied them all into knots. So she untied one scarf, and then there was another one, and then a bit like when you have a children's game. Is it hide the thingy, for the children? Anyway, she kept untying scarf after scarf after scarf until there was a diary in the middle of all of this. So it's a very thick bundle she brought out, came right down to this little tiny book. And she said, in this book is all my pain. When I found out, my thoughts, my feelings, how hurt I felt, how betrayed I felt. And she said, but I'm not feeling like that anymore. I don't know what to do with this book. Should I keep it? Should I throw it? I said, yeah, that's a fantastic question. And, before I say anything, thank you so much for trusting me and showing me this. I feel so privileged, that you've done this for me. I said, have you shown your husband? And she said, no. And I said, and she said, I don't know whether I should just get rid of it or what. And I said, well, you can. I said, but one option, and a really powerful option, if you feel up to it, is to do with your husband what you've just done with me. I said, I'm getting to see something so precious, but really it's for, this gift is for him. This gift is not for me. It's a gift. Why don't you bring him into whatever room you have and, sit down and say to him, I need to share something really deeply personal, and please be gentle with me because I'm feeling red raw about this. And I said, and make sure you tie it up the same way you tied it up, and untie it in front of him the same way you did for me, and share with him this book. And she said, okay, I'll think about it, because she was a very quiet, introverted woman. Okay, she's not like me, she was a very quiet, introverted person. So I wasn't sure whether she was going to show this guy or whether she was just going to get rid of it. I said, if you want to get rid of it, you can burn it, throw it into the ocean, rip it up into pieces, bury it in your garden, whatever you want to do with it, with your husband or without your husband, up to you. I said, but if I were you, if you do it with your husband, it's way more powerful. The next session, they came in together. She had done it with him. She had called him in. He was so moved. He had no idea. And the layers of the scarves were how when you have 2nd degree, 3rd degree, 4th degree burn? It was the degree of hurt that she felt. And something so visual was so powerful for me and for the husband to see how deeply he had hurt her. Even though he hadn't screwed another woman, just his betrayal with the sexting, because it was very raunchy sexting, I mean, like how deeply he had betrayed her, right? And so they did it together, and then they got rid of it together, and it was amazing. Now, coming back to that same couple, another interesting thing in working with them, their kids had moved out of home, and they had a family pool and stuff like that, and he wanted to he was a sexual kind of guy, he wanted to have sex with his wife in the pool in broad daylight, he wanted to do a few more other things. And when I saw her on her own after he'd said what he wanted, she said, Narina, look at me. He wants me to get naked in front of him in daylight in our pool. I don't have that kind of body. What happens if he looks at me and wants to vomit? And I said, my darling, men look at women very differently from how women look at women. I said, your husband is lusting after you, the way that you are now, and he really wants to screw you in that pool. So make no mistake, he doesn't want to do it with another woman. He doesn't want to sex another woman. He wants to sex you. He wants to do it with you, but he's not looking at you. So don't put your glasses on and look at you. He's looking at you, because I've heard, and you men in the audience can tell me, apparently, if you find a woman attractive once, you find her attractive forever, really. And I found that's true, because men who found me attractive in my 20s still find me attractive now, even though I don't look the way I did in my 20s, So I think there's an element of truth there. So anyway, so that was part of the work we did. And I think they did those things. And with that same couple as well, they had no, time alone, even though they've been married for like 30, 40 years, no time alone for so many years. So they started to go on, the proverbial date night. So what they would do to take responsibility, 1 week the husband would choose a date, and 1 week the wife would choose the date. And I said to the husband, I said, listen, my friend, that's great, but just remember, no 6-kilometer hikes, okay, on your date, because your wife, you're going to make something your wife's going to enjoy as well, right? So yeah. And do you know, he was the first one to take charge. So he was the first one to invite his wife for a date. Do you know where he took her? To his office. She had never been to his workplace. He wanted her to see where he spent the majority of his day. And when she got there, she saw on his desk a picture of her, you know? And they went after work hours. It was fantastic. Oh, I said, that's a really romantic first date, my friend. How did you think of that? He said, I just feel that so much of my life she doesn't share with me. And I wanted her to see where I spend 8 to 10 hours a day. And I said to her, I said, did you make love with him on the desk anyway? I don't know the answer to that question, but I said that maybe that can be date number 2. Anyway, any thoughts about that so far? Oh, Carol, have I with the lack of trust, coming back to you, trust takes time to rebuild, but we need, Maurizio always says we need trust, intimacy, and respect in a relationship. These are the 3 cornerstones of a happy relationship. And if these 3 things, so with any of your couples coming in, check to see your own assessment. What's the intimacy like? You know, are they making love? Not that they have to, but, you know, in fact, I've got another story for you for intimacy in couples. Let me just, I've got another story for you. What's the trust like between the 2 of them, and what's the respect like, right? Another fundamental question, and this is fundamental to any kind of therapy that you do, whether it's individuals, couples, or families, how much do they trust you? Because until they trust you, you're going to get nowhere with this couple, you know? One of the things I say to my couples when they first walk in, the very first session, is you need to know something before you start telling me any of your stories. That in this office, I take blame and judgment and I throw it away. I put it in a trash can far away from this office. We're not here to play who's the asshole. I say, you know, the snake that I put down, before I ask them to get rid of the snake, I say, now, before you put that snake down, that's the bridge between the 2 of you. And I need permission from you to get on that bridge so that I'll be hearing the most intimate stories of your life. So I need to be on that bridge between you for the next, for whatever time that we work together. And I hope you give me permission for that, right? But and also, like, after the very first session with any of my clients, I always ask myself, how much does this person trust me from the very first session? And how much is it growing? So with a couple, that's really important. I ask myself, who trusts me? Do I feel a sense that one person trusts me more than the other? You know? And another very important thing as a couple, you have to be aware if you're biased. Like if you cannot hold both people, you're going to do damage, you know? So Maurizio always talks about gender bias. So if you're a woman, do you take the woman's side? If you're a man, do you take the man's side? Dangerous. You can have empathy, you can have some kind of insight, but you got to try and make sure that you can hold both places. So, you know, in your head, if you can, after a couple leaves, so after the first session, the question that I've learned from Maurizio, where is the T of the therapist? If you were to draw it on a board, here's the husband, here's the wife, are you closer to one than the other? Or are you in the middle? You know, where are you? It's a really important question. So trust is not only in the couple, it's also between you and that person. So, and the other thing that also with expressions of trust and affairs, something I've learned from Maurizio is to go vertical, meaning ask them what was trust issues like in their own family of origin. You know, has there been betrayals in their own families? Has there been affairs? You know, who did they trust when they were growing up? Did they trust anyone? So I would just explore not just the couple, but their family of origin and bring that all in together. I mean, I've covered everything, Carol, but how's that for an answer so far?
Narina, you're absolutely correct. You're very insightful. I'm actually working with the lady who was cheated upon, and I'm primarily a trauma therapist. And you're absolutely correct that there has been betrayal of trust in her own background. Yeah. And thus we have been working on that. We're coming to the end of our personal work together, and we're going to move into couples therapy. And that's why I wanted to hear, you know, how you would do that. So you're asking about trust, intimacy, and respect. There was nothing when she first came to me. The intimacy has returned. The respect is growing a little bit, but the trust is very low. So, yeah. So I haven't gone into couples work yet.
Okay, and another thing I would like to say to that, Carol, is that I call it bullets. Okay, so whatever this guy has done, the bullet isn't only 1 year old. This bullet is however old she is, wherever it travels to the past. Okay, so that's really interesting work. But I was curious for you to say that the individual work is stopping now, and now I'm moving to the couple. So you feel you can't do both concurrently, is that right? Or don't answer me.
It's not stopping per se. But when she came to me with all her hurt and pain, and she wanted to break the relationship off, but she wanted to give him one more chance. And so when I explored her background, I realized that there was a lot of betrayal of trust in her background, and that there was a lot of trauma from that. And therefore, we've been working on that trauma to bring her to a more, to a less triggered spot, so that she's able to deal with this with this situation with her partner in a manner which is more in the here and now, as opposed to being triggered by all the childhood and past traumas.
I'll also check his out as well, because you know, like when couples meet, it's like when an iceberg, right? You can only see the tip of the iceberg, and so much is submerged under the water. And there's a theory that when we fall in love, out of the millions of people out there, how come we're so attracted to this particular person? It's like wheels in a cog, tick, 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 right? We fit in because there's a theory that we actually get attracted to people who are going to bring up the same emotional issues, the same emotional climate as what we grew up in. So that's very, very interesting. I found that to be generally true, that generally whatever themes are there in the couple, right, are there in the childhood as well, for both men and women. So this guy as well, you can, I wonder whether his father had affairs, whether his mother had affairs, somebody, I don't know. I mean, we won't stay stuck in that, but that's very, so thank you for that, Carol.
Thank you.
Narina, maybe we bring some other people also into the conversation if
sure.
I don't see anything on the chat, so if you want, you can also put stuff in the chat if you're too shy to speak. Is there any others who want to react to all that has been said so far?
Well, actually, could I before I just to say a few more things as well.
And after that is Nor, yeah? You put up your hand, right?
Is it? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You can continue first. It's okay.
You continue, and then we'll jump to him. Okay.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to mention defense mechanisms as well. It's really, really important to go through defense mechanisms and attachment styles with your couples. Not to go through with them, but just to know. With defense mechanisms, some people, when they get hurt, they get angry. And when some people, when they get hurt, they withdraw. Right? So these are two different types of defense mechanisms. Now, the thing with anger is anger can be hot or anger can be cold. So some people are hot angry, which means they're yelling, screaming, shouting, and maybe physical. Some people are cold anger, which means they won't say anything, but they will just go cold. They will withdraw their love. Very painful, okay? They're both as damaging as the other. One is not worse than the other, but people will generally say hot anger is worse than the withdrawal because it's so overt, but there's overt and covert, okay? But both very painful for whoever. And the other thing I wanted to mention in terms of, or should I go there now? Attachment styles as well. I do find this interesting. Some people, we have secure attachment styles, which means that, when you're a toddler, you explore your environment, you come back, check mommy and daddy are there, you play, you come back, so you have a secure attachment. Some people are insecure, which means you cling, right? You cling. Very clingy behavior. You want to spend a lot of time. You need a lot of reassurance. And some people have avoidant. Avoidant means that these people still are just like the insecure. They still want the person nearby, but they'll almost ignore them. All right. But make no mistake, they still really want the other person nearby. It's really important for you to identify your own attachment style and defense mechanism. For example, anyone guess what my defense mechanism is? Any guesses? Not Daryl, because he knows me.
Maybe hot.
Very good. Who said that? Okay, you guessed right, my darling. Not anymore, of course, because now I am so serene. But anyway, but definitely when I was younger, definitely hot, man. Now, also attachment styles. Anyone want to guess what attachment style I had? Harder to guess, I know. All right, I'll just tell you. I had insecure attachment style, right? So my mother and father, my mother had my second sister, and the babies were premature. It was a twin. My brother died at birth, and my mom was in hospital for a long time with the second baby. So suddenly my mom went missing. Plus, when I was 6 months old, my mom went back to work in Malaysia. I forgot to introduce myself personally. I'm actually from Malaysia, guys. I don't know whether you know. I was born in Kuala Lumpur. My father was a Sikh, and my mom was English Scottish. She was a diplomat who went to Malaysia, met my father, had me, and then the rest was history. So my mom went back to work when I was 6 months old, and I was left at home with the ayahs, you know. And my mom tells me that she came home one day unexpectedly, and she had left me, you know, in the arms of the ayah at home. I was crying. But when she came home an hour later, the ayah had just left me on the door. I'm still crying. My hands are out to reach, and I'm screaming for my mom an hour later, and no one was comforting me. Now, I think that happened every day. That, you know, the minute my mom left, I think they just dumped me at the door and they just went to the back. So anyway, so I developed an insecure attachment style. So in relationships, I have the hot anger and the insecure. So I'm just sharing that with you because I believe in being open, honest, and transparent. But I'm also, if I ask you to take risk in your life, I also need to take risk in my life. And I do that with my couples as well. So I will be clear and I'll be asking my couples, guess my style. You know, this is me, this is you. So I don't just sit there and be a cold, I belong to the humanistic experiential field of psychology, which means the self of the therapist is in the room with my couples, right? So I expose myself. If I'm asking them to expose themselves, then I also expose myself to have that, to share that vulnerability. So I just wanted to mention that before we continued. So I'm sorry, who's that young fellow who wanted to, Noewi?
Yeah, pleasure to meet you, Narina. My name is Noir. I am a
Noir.
student in the Master of Counseling at the moment. And I think an important question I would want to ask after hearing narration is, when working with couples, is it possible that a couple's dilemma is not within the relationship, but because of an external factor? So I think a common thing I hear about couples in Malaysia in particular is the idea that, you know, the parents disapprove of the relationship, or there are a lot of issues in regarding to the whether or not the families get along with each other, or just it's not that they don't want to get along with each other, but external factors prevent that. Like there are very personal conflicts that may involve other parties, which may not necessarily be involved in the room with just the two members of a normal couple. And then how is that kind of processed as a thematic?
Beautiful question, Noah. So a few things come to mind. Number one, another Mauricio term, he says he's got a term he calls intergenerational intimidation. That's when the generation above refuse to accept that the children that they gave birth to are now adults who are free to make their own choices in life, and they continue to impose their will. All right. Now, when you see controlling people, we control out of fear. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. So whenever you see control, these people are scared. So we're not here to dump on parents. We're not here to dump on anybody. We're here to understand people as a rule. Okay, so fear, control, intergenerational intimidation, right? And that couple, so that I'll just shout out a few things. So it's intergenerational intimidation. There's also loyalty conflicts. All right, who are they loyal to? And a couple has to learn to be loyal. You know, like if they truly love each other and it's a healthy relationship, you've got to be also aware that sometimes people are in unhealthy, toxic relationships and the parents are genuinely worried. That's a separate category to this. But supposing we have a young couple, they're in love, everything is fine, but the parents who are all spoiling the broth, They have to learn to protect their relationship. So I would be working with them on boundaries, so that's a separate topic altogether. That would be a whole session for me to talk about boundaries with you guys, so. But I'd also be telling them about intergenerational intimidation and how do they respectfully let the parents know that they are now adults and they don't want to have this need to learn how to put healthy boundaries in place. Okay, does that answer your question, Noah?
Yeah, thank you. So it would be the general idea of, kind of knowing how to assert yourself that this is my choice to get into the relationship, and knowing how to kind of put the foot down and not have their wants and their expectations from an intergenerational perspective interfere with the dynamic of a relationship that is perceived as healthy. Is that it?
Yeah, just remember it's always balance, right? So they need to learn to always remember that I would always encourage respectfully, but firmly tell the parents, look, I don't appreciate, I'm an adult now, it's my choice to be in this relationship. I get hurt when you blah, blah, I would like you to respect me, but also that if they just cut off the parents, right? And only do what the couple wants is out of balance. If they only do what the parents want and they cut off the couple, it's out of balance. So they need to have balance in life, okay? So how do you look after, a central question in all our lives is how do we look after ourselves and how do we look after other people? So Noah, I'd love to answer you further, but really that would take up the whole session, but
All right,
really
it's fine. It's fine.
it's loyalty conflicts, it's boundaries, and it's intergenerational intimidation.
Intimidation, yeah.
What they need to learn, and you may have to coach them how to put those boundaries in place. So I do a lot of coaching with my clients.
All right, thank you very much, Narina.
Pleasure.
There's a nice question by Emmeline also. Emmeline, I'd like to invite you to ask the question. It's well written. Maybe you can just read it first if you like, instead of me reading your question. Emmeline Pang.
Hi. Hi, Narina. So
Hello.
I'm working with a few clients actually that who have been cheated on. So they are the receiver of it lah. And they want to work on their marriage, but their spouses aren't willing to come in for couples work or even engage in personal therapy, which makes most of my clients quite discouraged. And I think most sessions they come in ranting about their spouses and how they aren't putting in much effort. So I was wondering, how can we work with these individuals, especially if their own spouses aren't willing to engage in therapy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a great question, Emmeline, but the thing is, right, these people have no bottom line. And the spouse who's been cheating on them knows that. This person already knows I can cheat and you're still going to stay. I can cheat, refuse to go into therapy, and you're still going to stay, So at the end of the day, in terms of the communication I was talking about earlier, I talk about communication in terms of power, right? So there's three basic styles of communication. Aggressive, the opposite of aggressive is passive, okay? These are on two ends of the continuum. What's the middle ground? Assertive. Aggressive, passive, and assertive. So we need to learn assertive communication. So when I talk to my couples of communication in terms of power, after going through it, what I say is aggressive communicators, the message is, my needs are important, your needs are not important. I'm important, you're not important. Passive communicators, your needs are more important than mine. You're important, I'm not important. And the assertive, the middle ground, is the beautiful one, of course. I'm important, you're important. My needs are important, your needs are important. If these people, I mean, like there's also religious stuff, like a lot of Catholics who don't want to get divorced, and some of these people are working hogtied, which means that they are not prepared to leave, right? They're not prepared to say, I'm really hurt and I'm not prepared to move on until we can address this. And the partners, apparently, from what you're saying to me, have got more of the aggressive style. They need to actually have firmer boundaries. So they have to, first of all, you have to do some work with them on their own sense of self-worth and self-esteem. My feeling is that they're having those people who, because people who are in the passive style of communication usually are people pleasers. They tend to be victims, right? Oh, I need to talk to you about the victim position is very important. And they also allow other people to invade their boundaries. They do not know how to protect themselves from abuse. Now, the victim position is something I do go through with everybody, whether it's individuals or couples. The victim position is something that we all do in our lives. I'm sure you're going to recognize this in a few minutes. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but we are in the victim position when we say, my life sucks, and my life sucks not because of me, but because of my parents, my partner, my blah, 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 the government, you know. I'm just writing something down. And so when you're in the victim position, now a human being never perpetuates a behavior unless they get a payoff out of it. All right? A human being never perpetuates a behavior unless they get a payoff out of it. So what is the payoff of the victim position? My life sucks. It's not my fault my life sucks. Anyone here got any idea what the payoff is?
No responsibility.
Well done. Is that Nisha?
Yes.
Well done, Nisha. Abdication of self-responsibility. Gold star to you, my friend. Because if it's not your fault, you don't have to do a damn thing about it. You can just play the blame game, right? So I'll be working with those people to develop a much healthier sense of self, because there's no point asking someone with low self-esteem and people pleasing to go charging in there. They're not going to be able to do it. So I'll be working with them to strengthen their self-esteem muscles, right? Get them to see that this is whatever, and then ask them to talk to the partner to say whatever their boundary position is, right? And just remember, the person who is having affairs and not wanting to come to therapy, that person, if I asked you, parent, adult, child, which one are they? They're actually in parent position. They are very powerful. They can do whatever they want and get away with it. They are setting the rules, okay? So why would someone who has power at this point in time, that person has all the power in this relationship? If they go into therapy, they have to abdicate that power. Some people don't want to abdicate that power. So those people have a differential power dynamic. So I'll be talking to that person about power and relationships. And actually that brings to mind something else. I don't know whether you can see it, but what I also draw with on the board for my couples is I draw a relationship scale. Maybe can I just draw it for 1 second and I'll show it to you?
We'll hope we can see it on Zoom. Go
Can
ahead.
you see? I don't even know where the camera is. Can you see that? Maybe not. There.
Yeah, okay, Ken.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 100%, this is the yummiest relationship you can have. This is the yuckiest relationship you can have, the most abusive relationship. This is 0%. So 0% is no relationship. It's the relationship you have with any stranger on the street. Now, let me tell you, even with 0%, with a stranger on the street, we expect, as human beings, we expect people to be kind, honest, respectful, considerate, have basic human care or concern, which means if you fall down in front of them, they'll try and help you, friendly. And how do we know this? Because we are very angry when we don't get that from a stranger. That person was rude to me. That person just disrespected me. That person just tried to rip me off. That person just, I fell down and didn't even give a shit. You understand? So we expect that from a basic stranger. Now, if you're lucky, you start here, but with time, right? Trust and intimacy in a couple grows. You go through bad and good times together, right? You say, I'm sorry when you make a mistake or you hurt someone's feelings. You say, thank you. You say, please. You talk about stuff. And over time, this is any kind of friendship, any kind of relationship, you can get a very yummy relationship that strengthens over time. Unfortunately, some people start here, but then they go here. Okay? They walk on eggshells. They're tolerating abuse. Their spouses talk like shit to them, put downs, belittling, sarcasms, affairs, physical, financial, sexual abuse, all the shitty things down here. And every now and then that person is suddenly nice to them, suddenly friendly, suddenly shows some concern. And the person goes, oh, this is wonderful. If only this person could be like this all the time, I'd be so happy. I tell them, we're not even trying to get up here. 0% now becomes 100%, and the minus 100 becomes 0. Can you see that? We shift the scales. This no longer exists. So I'll ask my couples, where are you on the scale? Are you traveling more up here or more down here, or are you floating around here? But make no mistake, it's a tragedy in life that we give the best of ourselves to either our colleagues or strangers on the street, and we bring the worst of ourselves into our homes. And we allow things like, if you have your period, you can be bad-tempered. You have a bad day at work, you can be bad-tempered at home. You can bring all your troubles and you think, you can just put up with me, the way I can just dump my shit all over you and can just put up with it. That's not really a good thing. What I talk to my couples about is that we offer each other unwritten contracts. It's not a contract, but it's not a written contract, but it's a contract. And this is the contract, so the contract with whoever's talked about, Emmeline was mentioning, the contract is, I can screw around on you. I don't have to go for therapy, and you're going to put up with it. And the other person goes, I'm going to go to therapy, and I'm going to whinge about you. I'm going to come home and make you dinner and make love to you and beg you to come for therapy. I think it's a pretty shitty contract, So I talk about contracts. I say, what kind of contract do you want in your life? Yeah. Noi. Why does that happen? Why is that instinct to bring the worst to people we're comfortable with? Okay, so Noah has asked another interesting question. I think it's again something about awareness, Noah. All right, I think that we need to all wake up to, and maybe when you go home tonight, to your own people, right? Can you please, as a term in psychology, activate the observing ego, right? Stand outside of yourself and observe yourself. How do you treat those nearest and dearest to you? Are you kind, nice, friendly, or are you sarcastic, dumpy, rumpy, grumpy, pumpy? What kind of person are you with the kinds of people that you're with? Many years ago, I tore up the contract that I was offering people, and I rewrote a new contract in my own heart of how I want. Oprah Winfrey, all know Oprah Winfrey, right? She says, be responsible for the vibe that you bring into the room. Now, for me, my home, right? My home is a sacred space. This is my new contract, okay? This is not the old, what I grew up with contract. Sacred space, meaning this house is free of abuse, that you are safe here. You're free from, if I make a mistake, I will apologize. I will take my responsibility for my own mistakes, my own shit, and I will be responsible. I'm not perfect. I cannot be perfect. I will screw up. You can count on it. But if I screw up, if you tell me, if you tell me I've hurt you, I will take responsibility for that, right? But I've spent too much of my life in homes where that is not the case. Now, if you're lucky, if it's a sacred space, you work hard all day, you go to school all day, you come home, and it's like plugging into a battery, it's like plugging into electric switch. You have a warm meal, you have a warm shower, right? There's a warm bed to sleep in. There's people who give a damn about you. You can talk about your problems. If you want to have fun, you can call your friends over and have some makan, goyang kaki, haha, not bad, my Malay. Anyway, you can have fun, and then you plug in, you recharge your batteries, and you go out again the next day to conquer the world, right? To work, to study, to whatever. For most people, you go to work all day, you come home tired. That's the last place you're going to recharge your batteries, right? You're going to come home, you're going to be walking on eggshells, people are going to be fighting, you have to take sides, you can get grumpy, people are dumping their shit on you. It's exhausting, right? So have a look at the contracts, talk about contracts with your clients, and have a look at your own contract before you work on somebody else's contract. I'm hoping that you're looking at yours first. Otherwise, it's just hypocrisy in action, So yeah, the diagram was clear. I've got another question. Okay, Emmeline's got another question. Emmeline, do you want to ask that question?
Sure. So how do you navigate the inevitable influence of culture or religion in marriages? So for example, Malays, especially in Malaysia, they're allowed to marry 4 times, and sometimes the wives feel obliged to say yes, even though they don't necessarily agree.
Yeah, sure. This probably will be tricky for me to answer because I don't live in that culture and we don't have those rules here. But, and I don't know what the rules are for Malaysian women, whether they can divorce the men, or is it only the men who have power? And I don't really want to get into the political stuff in this lecture because it'll be too hard. But really, I mean, that there's an inequity right there. The power imbalance is really not there to begin with. So, but I would still be working with that person to develop their self-esteem, their rights, and to talk to that person about their wishes. And I can't really answer the question because I don't know the legality, and I don't really want to go into that debate here. I don't think that's the purpose of today's thing. So sorry, Emmeline, if I haven't answered that as well as I could. But I think it's very difficult if the laws don't support you. I'm very lucky to live in Australia, where the laws are equitable for both males and females and across the ages. You could be 100 years old here and go to university, you know? You can be, you know, I love Australia because it's very equitable. That makes me very lucky. So I feel like it's an unfair statement for me to judge that. It's another question here. Jason, what's your question?
Narina, before you go away from that one,
Yeah,
I think, in therapy, we still have the duty to help the client to discern what is the most important thing to themselves. Because sometimes when clients come in, they're confused between the expectations of the world and who they are and who they want to be. And especially when in Malaysia, I think the cultural overlay is very heavy. And
yeah,
it's quite important for us to help the client peel apart the cultural overlay, take a good look into who they are as people, and then
yeah,
make choices that will lead them towards happiness.
yeah.
Support them towards those choices that lead to happiness. That's
I,
those.
I, I would definitely agree with what all that you're saying, Daryl.
Okay, go on to the next piece.
Um, yeah. Is there another question?
I think I saw a few more questions on the chat.
No, I don't think so. I think we've answered the question. There's been here, Po Yi.
Jackson.
Po Yi.
Yes,
Oh,
hi. Sorry, my video is a bit crazy. I've been told I look like a Picasso building picture, so I'll keep my video off if that's okay.
Sure.
So
I thought you looked better, boy.
shut up. Don't make me start cursing on a video call. All right. So coming back to the model you use on the parent, adult, child, right? So I mean, coming from the book that I wrote, sometimes it's important to invite the child out to play, which is a little bit different from what you said when you got into a relationship. Is the adult and how the status changes. From what I read, it was more like it's the child that was in charge of the emotion, and therefore it's what makes you guys fall in love in the first place. And that throughout the session, I would actually get them to explore the child, the playfulness of the child, and to get the couple to actually come out and play with one another. So, but hearing from what you said and how you've used the model, I'm now a little bit unsure if I've been using it right. So just like to hear from you.
Let me clarify, because I didn't go through the whole model. I only gave you one part of the model, all right? So we don't want to get rid, I mean, like, to go, I only mentioned it in a very brief way. I only mentioned parent, adult, child. But if you go through it, and we probably don't have time. Do we have time? How much time do we have?
40 minutes.
All right. So if you want me to go through it a bit more, if that's helpful for you, it's actually very, very powerful. So with the parent, adult, child model, when with the parent, I always tell my clients, even though you're going to hear the word child mentioned in this model, we're not talking about children, we're talking about adults. We're talking about any interaction between two adults, me and you, the two of you, whatever, right? And what I do is I draw two stick figures on the whiteboard, and I'll ask the couple, I'll say, now tell me the basic job of a parent, basic. And they will tell me things like provide food, shelter. I'll help them if they get stuck, love, teach, guide, discipline, set boundaries, impose rules. And once I've done all of that, I go, so parents are very powerful people, right? Very powerful. They set the rules. And parents are also very over responsible because they're responsible for themselves and their kitty winks. And as adults, this gets broken down into two functions. To show you guys, because, like, before we do anything else, let me just show you what I do. So again, can you see my scratchings? I draw a stick figure. Can you see that?
Pull back a bit.
I can use a different pen. Hang on.
Okay. Can you all see that, guys?
Can you see as 2 stick figures? There.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So I draw 2 stick figures and then I'll ask them, so parent, all the different jobs I put here, right? And then I divides into 2 functions and I just do it like that. It's on the board. Critical parent or nurturing parent. We're in critical parent mode when we tell another adult human being what to do or what not to do, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. You're doing this right, you're doing this wrong. So we are shaking our finger at another human being. We're in nurturing parent mode when we're looking after them. We're taking tender care of another human being. Okay, so supposing, and I'll tell my couples this. I say, supposing I'm in nurturing parent mode when I say things like, you look cold, can I get you a jacket? Have you eaten? Can I get you some food? Do you like a cup of tea? You look sad, do you want to talk? We're nurturing, and we need that in all our relationships, friendships. We need to take care of our people. And then I go down to the child and I'll tell them, now shout out to me, not to you. I'll tell my couple, I'll say, shout out all the positive and negative qualities about children. Things like playful, joyful, spontaneous, uninhibited, loving, caring, manipulative, liars, rebellious, annoying, okay, naughty. And what I also say is children can be divided, the child ego state can be divided into 3 different functions as an adult: the natural child, the adapted child, and the rebellious child. So the natural child is where we have fun in life, okay? It's where we enjoy life, where we let down our hair. You might go out, have a few drinks, dance. You might go to the beach and take off your shoes and walk on the beach and eat an ice cream and get excited when you see a dolphin or rainbow, right? We are in adapted child when we are walking on eggshells trying to make somebody else happy, all right? So going back to the question, like a few minutes ago, someone said to me, what about, those parents, those intergenerational intimidation parents, right? Those kids need to learn to grow up because they're still in adapted child mode with their own parents, if you know what I mean, right? Trying to make somebody else happy. And we don't ask for our own needs to be met. We're just tiptoeing, trying to make the other person happy. We are in rebellious child mode when we throw a tantrum and we tell the other person to get stuffed. We don't want to live our life that way. So we don't set our boundaries from a adult, self-respectful way. We do it from a yelling, screaming, or powder way, right? So I go through all of that, and I also say to a couple, now, with the natural child, which part of your life do you think you need it the most? Think of the words uninhibited, joyful, spontaneous. Any ideas, guys? What part of a couple's life do we need the natural child? Any of you want to answer? Anyone know? Think of the words uninhibited, joyful, spontaneous, huh?
Intimacy?
Well done, Zafia. Absolutely. Sex, Emmeline, fantastic. Yeah. If you can access your inner child, you can have a very yummy sexual life with your partner. So yes, so to answer to your question, it is very important for people to access their natural child to have fun with each other. All right, but there's more to it than that. And I'm afraid I'm zooming too quickly. Can you hang on for 1 second? My dog is just woofing. I'll just bring it in. Hang on for 1 second.
Jason, when Narina is back, why don't you ask her your question? Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Daryl.
Sorry about that. I was just getting distracted by my dog.
Okay, so gonna get Jason to ask.
Before Jason, was that helpful? The parent-adult child model for people? Was it clear? If I do ever come up to Malaysia and I do talk about this, you can come and listen to it in more depth. Okay. Sorry, Jason.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks, Narina. I've was asking a question in regards to the comments you made about the abuse.
Jason, is it Jason? Jason, I know.
Yeah.
Hello, my friend.
Yeah. We the Perth people are taking over Malaysia as well. So basically, yeah, that when you spoke about the factors of abuse, like the different ones like sexual abuse, financial, physical abuse, and that type of thing, like we do have a different role to play than just holding up the couple when continuing on and as therapists. And so even the other day, I said to a young adult female, like, from what you're telling me, I'm concerned about like some of these behaviors. She's now reported that the partners reduced some of those, and she's happy to continue with the relationship at the moment. But how do you work with that when you're saying like you like getting in the gutter, you like getting like that, like dirty into the dirty stuff, and then you identify some really kind of unhealthy power dynamics that lead to like entrenched forms of abuse. Like what do you do?
Yeah, well, I call them red flags. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll always identify the red flags. Now, it also it depends whether or not both people are in the room with me or only one person in the room with me, if you know what I mean. Like supposing one person's come in and they're telling me about all these things, right? And it's and there's a lot of red flags, there's physical abuse, there's threats. I will go through a safety plan with them. I would go through, this is sounding like emotional abuse or psychological abuse, and if both people are in the room, then I would still be doing it, but in a much more gentle way, like depending on the person. I'd say, look, guys, I am worried about the level of conflict here. I just need to make sure that people are safe. But maybe we should break up and do some individual therapy and take them into individual therapy so that I can find out what's going on and then feed that back into the couple. But usually, I found in my experience that in overt abuse, like when there's lots of abuse going on, it's usually one person will come in and report that. Usually, when there's a lot of abuse, when they come in, they're too scared to say that in front of a therapist because they're going to get in trouble at home. So sometimes I'll find a couple will come in and one person hasn't said much, and then later I'll get a text message saying, "Narina, can I come and see you on my own?" Because with my couples, I always say, "Look, guys, you're always welcome to come in on your own." So I'll say, yeah, sure. I said, how about if I put the invite out so it doesn't look like you're asking to see me on your own? So I'm going to put an invite out right now to both of you to say that I would like to schedule an individual so that I take responsibility for that part of it. And then I invite the partners to come in separately. And then from there, I work very, very carefully, but definitely I do. Now, you also like when I've done individual therapy and it's not couple work, and I've heard, there are things that worry me. I will say, listen, my friend, I am really, I have to tell you that I am seeing some red flags here. So the red flag, what I say, and I go through with him. Some people get very upset when you talk about that. And I say, look, that's actually if it's really bad, I'll say, look, my friend, to tell you the truth, it's actually under the umbrella of domestic violence, To tell you the truth, it's actually under the umbrella, that's actually quite severe because some people minimize or, what they're going through. I have had some people get very upset and then they don't book a second appointment because it's too confronting for them. And also they're not ready to confront the issue in their relationship. So they get quite weirded out. So I try and be as gentle as possible. And I always say, look, and definitely if I'm working with someone who's going through domestic violence, because I've done a lot of work in domestic violence, I always say, look, I'm never going to tell you to leave, but I will tell you if I'm worried. And I said, but please don't feel that if you make a decision to stay for now, that I will judge you in any way. I'm here to walk the walk with you. I'm here to support you. But I do feel sad that you're going through such a terrible time right now, and I'm very worried about you. So that's my commitment as a therapist. So people have got to make up their own minds what kind of where they stand on that line. But yeah, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Okay. Anyone else with any more questions? There's 59 of us on the call, so I'm sure.
Actually, William Leong's got a good question. Where's William?
Yeah, William, maybe you ask it. It's better to hear your voice than to read your text.
Okay, but I'm sorry, I won't show face. What was my question? Now I can't see my own chat. Wouldn't it be trust issues where you deal with both partners as an individual and as a couple? I mean, if I'm one of the partner, I would say I wouldn't know what this guy told you about. So, and I don't know what I can. I don't know what my partner tells you about me, and I may not trust you. So, would there be trust issues?
Not for me, William. To tell you the truth, I set that up from the very beginning. That when they come in, that's the way I work with couples. That I offer both. There's no strict routine that you come in here and there. I said, we'll just see how it goes and what therapy requires, and I'll put it out there. I said, because what I find is that people go and do their own individual therapy somewhere else, so they're telling somebody else all that stuff anyway. I'd rather be the one. But also, when a couple develops trust in you, what I say is like those sessions are confidential, and we'll see if and when we bring that into the sessions, with the couple. But I find that if you set up the rules from the beginning, and you're open and transparent about the way that you work, and they feel held both in the individual sessions as well as in the couple, and they can see that you don't betray their confidences in the individual, in the couple, I've never had that problem. But for me, I try and be very open and honest. But there are lots of people, William, lots of couple therapists here in Perth, who would never see couples for individual as well as couples, right? They would separate it out. But Maurizio always talks about, I had one family who came to see me many years ago. 3 children, teenagers, mom and dad. Mom and dad were had been a part of a cult. The whole family had been part of a cult. Mom and dad had a terrible relationship, and the kids were in trouble. Oldest boy had severe drug and alcohol issues, drug issues. The youngest daughter had severe anxiety, and the middle boy had just gone completely quiet. This family had 5 individual therapists. They brought me in to work with the youngest daughter. And I said, what about if I work with the whole family? But they all had the individual. And then when I identified that the couple needed therapy, they sought a 6th therapist out for the couple work. Now, if you ask me, is that good for the family? I don't think so, because everyone splinters into their own group rather than coming together. It's like you're dealing with jigsaw puzzle pieces. But this question, I also believe that you have to, it's like, I can't say to you, my way is the right way. My way works for me. I've had to find out who I am as a person, who I am as a therapist, what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And you have to do the same. If you don't feel comfortable to do that, don't do it. Don't force yourself to do something that you don't feel comfortable with and you're not ready for. Please don't say that some expert told you to do that, because you've got to do your own journey here as well, and follow your own heart and your own belief systems with this. So I would just say, do what fits for you, William.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, Narina, maybe I just take you off in a slightly different tangent for a while, yeah? So one of the things that Mauricio also talks about in couple therapy is looking for the triangles, right? The third thing that the couple gets attached to in a negative way. Do you do a lot of work with that?
Actually, could I sabotage that and go somewhere else?
Okay.
Because I actually think there's a few things I think are worthwhile mentioning. One is the okay. Before I go there, if any of, I mean, definitely, if you're going to work with couples, I would definitely look into love languages. That's number one. But let's just talk about some basic things. One is about apologies. When I was younger, and for a lot of people, apologies, their definition of apology is very narrow. Okay. So when I was younger, I would not apologize if I thought that it was not my fault. And also, if I was worried that if I apologize, the other person was going to interpret that as it being all my fault. So if it wasn't all my fault, I would often refuse to apologize. And I find that with my couples, that they don't want to apologize if the other person is feeling upset because they think, well, it's not my fault, you know? So as I've got older and I've studied more psychology and spirituality, um, my version of apologies is much broader. So now, and I teach my clients this, right, that I can now apologize for my part of something. So supposing I got hurt for a real reason, but as I've explained to you before, that when I get hurt, my anger is hot. So even though I got angry for a good reason, the way that I expressed myself was inappropriate. Okay, maybe I started to yell, scream, shout, or say some swear words or whatever. So I learned that I can still say, look, I was angry for a real reason, but I'm really sorry for the way that I expressed myself. I'm really sorry for the way I expressed my anger. It was inappropriate. So I can apologize for that. I could also say, look, I'm sorry I'm sorry that we fought, or I'm sorry for my part in that conflict. Another form of apology as well, which I couldn't do when I was younger, is supposing someone came to me and they're upset and really I didn't think I'd done anything wrong. I can say, listen, I'm really sorry if I have caused you any pain and suffering. You know, that was not my intention. Okay, so it's a much broader apology. And I think couples need to learn about the art of an apology. The other thing as well is I also go through with my couples is I'm sorry, please, and thank you are the three most underused words in any language around the globe. And a lot of couples often stop saying these basic niceties. Like I remember one wife telling me, why should I say thank you to him for doing the dishes? I do the dishes all the time and no one thanks me. And I said, yeah, I'm very sorry to hear that. But wouldn't you like to be appreciated for doing the dishes? Wouldn't you like someone to say, hey, I saw the dishes were done, thank you, you know? So I said, well, it's up to you. What contracts you want in this new relationship. Remember, we can't change what happened yesterday. We're here to see what we can do from today onwards. So I do go through that as well. Another thing that I do with my couples, I write a sentence on the board. This is usually in the, at the start of therapy somewhere. And I'll say, I want to write a sentence, but there's one word missing. Can you guess what word it is? I want to ask you guys the same thing. All right. So I'll write on the board, I'm not happy because blank. What's the one word in the blank? I'm not happy because blank. Can anyone
I'm
guess?
not appreciated.
You,
You. Who said you?
me, Zafia.
Very good, my friend. I'm not happy because you are doing something or you are not doing something. All right. So that means that the couples usually come in, and people come in and they usually have like guns aimed at each other, not real guns, right? But I say that, we have to learn that, as the gun is always pointed at the other. You are the asshole. No, you're the asshole. If you did this, it's because you did this. And I say, we have to learn to put these guns down, right? I also talk about, like, if a couple has had a lot of conflict, I will talk about being battle weary, the language of war. That when you guys talk, is a really a language of war, a couple who are really in a lot of conflict. Sorry, Daryl, I just jumped in there with those things.
Okay, finish your other thoughts that might be there, Narina.
I'm trying to write all my little notes I've been writing here on the side here. Now, yeah. I mean, one thing I go through with all my people as well, I talk about the three things that every human being has to get into place. If these three things are not in place in one way or the other, then we suffer. And for me, these three things it's a bit like a triangle, but like at the pinnacle is self-esteem. And by self-esteem, I do not mean are you good at maths, but you're bad at running, so you can have high self-esteem in one area and bad self-esteem in another area. I'm talking about your relationship with yourself. Are you your own best friend or are you your own worst enemy? If you are if you're everybody else's best friend, you put everyone else's needs in front of you, you are your own worst enemy. The second issue is an issue of responsibility. Some people are over responsible. They take up all the responsibility in the house. Some people are irresponsible. You know, they drop their responsibility. But what we have to learn, again, with the balance, over responsible, irresponsible, is self-responsibility. And it ties into the third issue, which is boundaries. And this comes into what we talked about boundaries earlier. That, you know, boundaries are our limits in life, and boundaries are how we protect ourselves from abuse. And how this works, how these three work in tandem, is when you learn to love yourself and be your own best friend, and when you learn to be self-responsible, to not be over-responsible or irresponsible, but to achieve that balance, then and only then can you set and maintain healthy boundaries in your life. But as long as you're everybody else's best friend and your own worst enemy, and you're over responsible, which means you worry about everybody else, but you forget about yourself, so you're irresponsible to yourself, then you will be unable to set and maintain healthy boundaries in your life. But when you learn to be when you learn to love yourself and you learn to be self-responsible, then and only then can you set and maintain healthy boundaries in your life. So I do a lot of work on this. I also do a lot of work on self-esteem with my couples and with my individuals, you know. And I also do a lot of work on responsibilities, like whether people being over responsible, irresponsible, and self-responsible, you know. So I do a lot of individual work, even when I'm working with a couple. Oh, and definitely, you know, what we haven't mentioned so far, which is so critically important, is family of origin. With all my couples, you know, depending on what's happening, sometimes we go do crisis management for a bit before we can do this, but whenever I can, some people we're quicker to jump into it, but I will explore each person's family of origin, you know, what is in the individual stories and what are the patterns that I can see from the past to the present, you know, plus what's going on for them now. So that's very important that we haven't mentioned yet. That's crucial, you know, and I'll do that with the couples, and it's really illuminating. So yeah.
No, Narina, maybe you can just give an example of family of origin work, because there are different sorts of people on the call. Huh? So some have not been trained by Mauricio and all. Yeah, so that will help.
Right. So so basically, you know, with each partner, okay, just a few things here actually. Basically, so before I even do the family of origin, supposing, and this is a very nice part, like when a couple comes in, they tell me what's going on, and one of the first questions I'll say, what's your love story? How did you guys meet? And that's usually a much softer question, you know, and I'll see who will answer that question. If I've met people individually before they come in together, I'll ask them, even if I've heard the love story from one person, I'll definitely still ask the second person the same question to see what they tell me. All right. Now, family of origin, what I'll do is I'll say to my couple, I say, look, can I get to know you guys better? Sometimes we have to go backwards before we can go forwards. I need to know you guys as individuals. Who would like to go first? Who would like to tell me a little bit more about yourself? And they'll go, well, what? I said, well, how many siblings have you got? You know, mom and dad still alive. And I'll start to draw a little genogram on my lap, you know, and I'll start to get to know them. And I'll find out more about what happened in one. And then it probably would be too difficult to do both people in the one session, but the next session I'll pick up with the other one, you know, and ask them about their life. And then I'll start to, as the sessions go on, we build, you know, so the sessions are like, you know, we're putting one brick in front of the other. Yeah. Did that answer your question, Daryl?
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe
like, apart from the
a
general,
bit more on, you know, how the family of origin affects some of the couple. Maybe if you have stories that will help, I think.
sure. I mean, like, even with the couple who are in trouble right now, you know, the one I told you about, the two couples, remember we talked about them in the beginning, the ones that are still in trouble. So with that one, the husband who's angry, his father was a very angry person, and there was definitely abuse issues in his family growing up. So he's never really learned how to manage his anger. And the wife, her father abandoned the family, so the mother, she was a twin. And so basically the mom had the two girls and the father left. And the girls would still have contact with the father, but he was an angry person. So she always grew up with this father when she saw him, who was angry. So definitely what we identified in this couple work is that the wife couldn't handle the husband when he was angry dad, not angry dad to the children, but angry, appeared as an angry dad to her, so that's one way of how both of their families influence them and how they manage their own emotions and how it's affecting the couple. But it happens in every single one. It's always relationships between what happened to you in your past. Another one, many years ago, when I was working in a crisis center, so this wasn't couple counseling, but I'll just show you how powerful family of origin can be, is that one man came in one day. He was really angry. He'd gone home and he just found his wife having an affair, right? And so anyway, we were in our session, we went straight into a very deep session, even though it was his very first intake session at the center. And basically, he had 3 kids. His oldest son was 14. And when I did his family story, when he was 14 years old, his mom had an affair and left the family. So that can be quite significant, like intergenerational patterns. And so they're called nodal points. So sometimes, like if supposing you went through a traumatic time when you were, I don't know, a particular age, sometimes when you're married and your children are the same age, you may start to be quite activated without knowing why, without being truly cognizant of the past influences and the present. So it can be as dramatic as that, but it can just be like, how did you learn, and also like what you learned to accept in a relationship. Like supposing if you had parents who were very, like with my parents, my parents fought a lot, so I had a very high tolerance for conflict in my own relationships, whereas some people, their parents never fought, so they have a very low tolerance to conflict. Now, so it just means that if you're if you tolerate conflict a lot and you display a lot of anger, but you're with somebody who can't tolerate conflict, and because of their own family, it creates a lot of disharmony. So it can be so many different things. Of role models. How do you model yourself as a mom? How do you model yourself as a wife? How do you model yourself as a father or as a husband? Can come from our role models, when we're growing up. There's another question here from Zafia. Hang on, there's a few here. Rachel, do you want to say yours?
Yep. Hi, Narina. Just a
Hi.
quick one. Just hearing from you about like couples with a lot of rage or anger issues, or maybe just passive aggressive. How do you teach them to regulate, or is that something that you ask them to do individually in session?
No. So definitely, like I'll go through the communication in terms of power. I've got another session that I do on anger. This is some of the psycho educational work I do. I will talk about it with their, I'll talk about their family of origin and where they learn to regulate there. I'll go through the attachment styles. I'll also go through Stephen Stosny. Have you guys heard of Stephen Stosny? He's done a lot of fantastic work on anger. He's got a website called www.compassionpower.com. He has a book called The Powerful Self, and that was written many years ago. So I think he's got more resources now, but his model of anger I go through with, it's too long for me to go through this with you now, but I use that. But I also talk about, like, remember the over-responsible, irresponsible, self-responsible. I'll talk to them about taking more responsibility about their emotions. Like at the end of the day, the only thing, we can change and control, we don't want to change and control who we are. This is a very important thing, like, we don't want to change and control who we are. We want to love and honor the individuals that we are, but we want to change any problematic issues in our lives. This is how we cope. So anger, communication, sex, money, parenting, finances, cleanliness, hygiene. This is not who you are. This is how you've learned to cope. But the problem is with people, after 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of living, who you are and how you cope merges. So it's like an egg. You know, when you have an egg, you have the egg white and the egg yolk. It becomes one egg. And I tell my people, I have to help you separate your egg yolk from your egg white. Love and honor the individual that you are. Then let's find out what kind of chick you are, what kind of guy. But if it's anything that's causing you or your loved ones distress, let's look at that if you want to, you know? So I really separate that. And I'll also give them the resources, like I told you, like I'll go through my own. I'll also recommend books. So I'll go through it with them, but I will do, if I need to do individual work with them, I will do individual work with them on the particular issue. Zafia's got a question.
Do you base your therapy on any one particular theories? That's the
No, I don't. I learned. I've been a therapist now for 30 years. So I believe in learning. I'll be learning until the day I die. You know, so my cup is not full. My cup is always a little bit empty, so I can learn more and more and more. So I still actively read all the time. I you know, train myself as much as possible. But I take things that I find helpful. Like I like the imago work very much, but I also, there's a limit. You know, you take what you want from each one. I think the imago therapy stuff is lovely. I think ACT is lovely. I like the parent adult child model, which is Eric Burns' model. I like lots of different things. So what I do is I call it my own professional toolkit of repertoire of things that I use. So I've got a whole bunch of things in there. So it's not one particular thing. I'm not. I would think that would limit me as a person. I like to live and learn, and then just keep. The way I look at it, it's like I've got a treasure chest in my office, and the treasure chest is full of emeralds and rubies and diamonds and pearls. And every day when a couple comes in or an individual comes in, I look at my treasure chest and I go, what in my treasure chest can I help this individual? So it's for particular people, you know. So I look at it more like that rather than saying that I'm a purist in one area. I'm not a purist.
Narina, if I could
Yeah.
follow up on that, then how do you not lose your way? Like, you know, if you don't have a basic scaffolding to follow, then, you know, the therapy can be all over the place and you sort of, you know what I mean?
Yes, darling, Zafia, beautiful question. But is your trust and faith in yourself or in your tools? You know, I also think that's also part of the journey of a therapist. Remember baby therapy to, you know, more mature therapists. I think that it's a journey. And I think it's about learning to have faith in yourself. So I still know what I'm doing with my people. Like I told you, I have a clear idea of what I'm doing. What I use in each session comes from my treasure chest, you know. But if I'm like a little robot and I just get a manual and say, here, do this with your couples, one model doesn't fit every human being in this world, you know. It's not possible. For me, it's like, you know, you got to tailor make your clothes to fit your client. So for me, I think it's about learning to develop trust in yourself, Zafir. But I love your question. But I think it's about learning to know, first of all, you got to figure out what kind of chick you are, what kind of guy you are, and then go from there. You know, that's what I would suggest. That's the horse before the cart. Otherwise, you put your faith too much. Actually, this actually is a beautiful question, Zafia, because you know, like in terms of self-esteem, I always think I always have a very visual mind. And I always think of cakes, you know, cakes with icing. And I will draw a cake on the board. I'll draw, you know, a full cake has only a tiny bit of icing, and the full cake and got a tiny bit of icing on top, right? When you learn to love yourself, it's like this full cake, all right? And then the icing on the top is your degree, your relationship, a nice house, car, money, whatever. But if you lose the icing and you're just the cake, which is just who you are as a human being, you need to know that you're a nice cake. Even if you if you go through a divorce and you lose your partner, you lose your friends, they dump you, you lose your job, you get sacked, you lose your house through a divorce or a fire, right? You lose whatever makes you, whatever you think your self-esteem is. you still know your nice cake, and you can always go and get more icing if you need to, like find another partner, get another job, make new friends, rebuild your life. But most people are empty cake. They're all icing, no cake. They only value themselves for their degrees, their jobs, their partners, their friends, their house, their cars. So if they have all these, so in psychology, we call it internal locus of control and happiness, meaning the full cake, an external locus of control and happiness, meaning the all icing, no cake, which means if you lose the icing, there's no cake there. So for me, always develop the cake first, and then get the icing. And I'll do it with my clients as well. Is that analogy helpful for people? Yeah. But yeah, for me, the tools enhance the work I do, but what's the question? Like, am I it helps me. It's not the other way around,
And I think this also comes back to the whole question of the self of the therapist, right?
Yeah. But also, I definitely think that, give yourself time to develop. I mean, really, I think that it's taken me years and years and years to get here, and I still have years and years to go. I still can't wait to be one day a 70-year-old therapist. I always tell myself, I can't put my 50-year-old head on my 40-year-old head. I can't put my 50-year-old head on my 30-year-old head shoulders. I can't put my 50-year-old head on my 20-year-old shoulders. It's taken me all this time to get here. I can't put my 60-year-old head on my 50-year-old shoulders now. I can't put my 70-year-old head. I can't wait to get there. I'm someone who's enjoyed getting older, but I am where I am in the journey of my life and my awareness, but I'm looking forward to learning and growing more. And I think by the time I'm 70, I'm going to be smoking hot and cute and cuddly and everything else. But at the moment, I'm 54 years old and smoking hot and cute, cuddly. Not true. But, I just think that I'm just where I am at the moment. I still have lots. I have my life to grow and be that person. So I like the journey that I'm on.
Narina, that's a great statement. I think it's a good way also to close out today's session because we're kind of a minute or two before the end. So
good, because my brain is going to mush very quickly. You can tell I'm losing my words.
Okay. So before we lose you completely, I think I just want to kind of close it here. This sessions are just to encourage couple and family therapy. We kind of do it every month, as I said at the beginning. We will use different topics. And I think this month we are very lucky that Narina joined us with her animation and her energy and her deep knowledge of 30 over years. And we hope you'll join us for more of the sessions, Narina, because we have it once a month and we'd like to bring you back again. And Narina is planning to come to Malaysia. When did we say? Mangosteen season. No, October.
You said I couldn't come in mangosteen season. You said I had to come in October.
The timing was bad. Mangosteen season, we are in Italy this year for the conference, family therapy.
In Perth, I'm a very good cook, my friends, and I can cook and get all the Malaysian food over here. I cannot get the fruit. So it's been years since I've had a rambutan or a mangosteen, and I can tell you, I dream of that. And Daryl says I can't have it, so I'm very sad.
We'll try and figure this one out for you. Don't worry.
I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm cool. I'm fine.
Okay. So with that, we want to close. I hope you enjoyed the session. Our webpage has an email address. If you like to, if you feel there's a special topic that you think we should work on, drop it to us. Make suggestions.
Before you all go, can everyone just put on your mics for 1 second? You don't have to put on your photo. If I can't see you, I can't see, but you can put your mics on, all right? And can anyone just shout out, give me something that you got from today? Shout out. Don't wait to be picked. Anyone? Or should I start picking? Pardon?
Everything was good.
Was good?
Everything was good.
Everything was good. Somebody else?
You spoiled for choice.
Oh, anybody else? I want to hear some feedback. Otherwise, I'm going to go away thinking, what the hell? Do they like it or not?
Learning to trust yourself.
Learning to trust yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, the talk of sense of self and bringing the therapist into the room, that was very helpful. Also knowing that you don't necessarily have to follow a theory and only work through that, was also good because I also tend to go all over the place, and I picked the tools that help during the sessions.
That's
So
great.
that was very confident, inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Zafia.
Yeah,
Anybody?
Narina, I really like the parallel work, the therapists and also the clients, so that is something that I want to take home. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Narina, I like your snake activity. It's very beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I take comfort in aging. That's one of the many things I.
It's like a good wine, my friend. If it ain't old, it ain't good.
Yeah. I think I like what you said about apologies, not that I'm wrong, but I'm, if I've hurt you because of what I said, it's not that I admit wrong.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think there is a very poignant understanding and enlightenment from the session, especially in terms of how there is both a dyadic and a personal component in working on relationships. And it's not just your self-esteem. It's not just you need to work on yourself. It's the fact that relationships are beautiful because two people come together to make something. And I think that was very well illustrated from the sharing today.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for all your input, Noah.
There's a few more in the chat, but in the interest of time and staying committed to it, I'd like to just thank everyone for joining us this evening, and see you next month for something else.
Look, can I just say thank you so much for everyone for attending today. It's been a big pleasure for me and big privilege to be here, and I hope you got something out of it. And thank you so much. I hope you got something out of it.
I'm sure they did, Narina.
Definitely. Thank you, Narina. Bye-bye.